Hello, everyone, and we're back live again with one of the most interesting and important conversations of the week. It's actually one of the most that's happening in the entire industry, multifamily industry right now. Uh, if your portfolio has dryers, and it does, the next 60 minutes could be the most valuable hour you invest in this month, maybe this year. For those of you that are joining us live on either YouTube or LinkedIn or X, please drop your property count in the comments. Tell us where you're managing from. Q&A is open. Drop your questions throughout the conversation and we'll hit them at the end. Now, I'm going to pass it on to Kenny. Introduce Kenny first. Kenny, welcome to the show.
How you doing?
Tell us a little bit about yourself, your professional background, and what you're currently doing.
Yeah, long-standing service technician in the field, pretty much my entire life. Then ended up in the multifamily business, and happened to stumble into dryer vents, and somehow or another, we now service over 500,000 dryer vents a year.
Back to JB right now. JB, please introduce yourself to the audience.
Yeah, of course. Well, first off, thank you for having us, Adrian. Really appreciate your time to do this with us and shed some light on what we do here. My name's JB Johnson. I'm the director of sales with R1 Facility Services. I've been with the company for going on 5 years now. Before R1, I was a baseball player. Played college baseball. Thought I was going to be a professional baseball player, and like many, that dream did not work out. Got into multifamily 10 years ago with a flooring company here in Atlanta, and moved from company to company. Ended up meeting Kenny at a managers meeting in Charlotte, North Carolina. We hit it off, became good friends, and after a little back and forth, decided to come over here and work with Kenny. And it's been an incredible decision. Really love R1, love what we do. It's really been fantastic.
Kenny, I think for context, share with us, please, how many inspections your company handles in a good year? Tell me about last year.
Last year, we did over 500,000. Did over 500,000 last year, and that keeps growing. And we do it not just in one state, but we do it nationwide, coast to coast. We've got a lot of stories. We got a lot of experience, and we thought it would be a really good idea to, put some education here together, because there's some really easy stuff to go over to really help, prevent fires. And we see it quite often, and sometimes quite tragically, when there's failure to adhere to the basics, provide service to your dryer vents. We recently had a customer, they reached out to us for a bid. They decided not to commit to the, service. Got a phone call about 3 months later. The property had a dryer vent fire and unfortunately had a loss of life. So, it's more than just maintenance, and we want to kind of get these things across the aisle, because we believe that, obviously take care of some basics, and we can really do our part to reducing this significantly.
JB, turning over to you, share with us a significant war story.
Yeah. Back in the early days of R1, we didn't have as many technicians. I went down to Naples, Florida, just to lend a helping hand, worked at a property. We were brushing from the exterior. To start this whole thing off, ended up lifting the flap open. There is a massive wasp nest inside the vent. So that's kind of how this property got kicked off, with, me running from wasp. I ended up getting stung on the neck. I think it was 3 times or so. So not a fun start to the job, but part of it. On that same property, there was a lady who had lived there I think it was 8 years. We were servicing her unit, and she said, no one has ever touched my dryer vents in 8 years. That vent, we literally filled up an entire trash bag full of lint from this lady's vent, which is kind of crazy. She said, yeah, my dryer, it's, I got to dry the clothes 3 or 4 times for it to work. And after pulling out a trash bag full of lint, I'm like, well, that totally makes sense. You should be able to run it one time now and be good. But that would probably be the war story I'd share, just an entire trash bag full of lint.
JB, from everything that you're seeing when you're, doing your first inspection, right? If it's like back-to-back years, I don't think is that relevant. But in your experience, right, what do you see when you do your first inspection? Like when that property becomes client for the first time, what do you typically see? Like what percentage of the vents are like in poor or like critical condition from a clog standpoint?
It really depends on the property, Adrian. As you know, you got garden styles that have a 2-foot run right into the breezeway, right? They're not going to have as many issues as, some of these mid-rise, high-rise properties we run into that have 60, 75-foot runs. I would say some of the things that we generally come across would be disconnected hoses. Generally speaking, anywhere from 2 to 5% of the properties that we service, the transition hose isn't even connected to the dryer, which obviously that is a huge problem. Not only you got a mess to clean up on the back side of the closet, right? But also just from a fire hazard standpoint. I'd say that's number one. Number two, I would say, is the wrong vent cover. A lot of people use vent covers that just do not allow for airflow. That's on the safety side of things. Now, looking at aesthetics, some of these vent covers as well, they'll catch lint on the exterior, and it just is not a good look. When you're taking new prospects around the property, trying to get them to lease a unit, and they see lint hanging out of the vent covers. I would say that's probably number two.
From a layperson standpoint, I'm looking at a vent cover. I don't know what I'm looking at. Is this a good one? Is this a bad one? So give me some direction here. Like, what am I looking at, and what it should be like a proper one versus one that it's a red flag or a yellow flag?
Of course. We love single flap covers here at R1. Single flap covers, they tend to operate the best. They allow for the most airflow, which obviously that hot air escaping that vent, that's a good thing. That means it's not going back into your dryer, which could ignite and turn into a fire, right? So I'd say number one, single flap covers. We do see in the multifamily world a lot of 3-4 louvered covers. Now, even though the louvered covers aren't against code, what we see with those louvered covers is, number one, after a couple years, and I'm sure the maintenance guys out there can attest to this, they start turning into almost a Dorito chip type substance that you can flick them and these things are going to crack and shatter and break. So I would say, even though they're not against code, they do cause a problem. A lot of these louvers get stuck. They're not opening up, which means the lint's getting stuck on the outside. Again, not a very good look aesthetically for the property. But from a fire safety standpoint, that lint's going to start building up behind that louver cover. And once it starts building up, it snowball effects, and that heat's got nowhere to go but back inside the dryer. I would say the one that we have a lot of issues with, and that we see properties consistently have work orders coming in for, would be metal grates. A countersunk vent that is stuck behind a metal grate with metal louvers. Obviously, those plastic louvers, they can open up, they can let it breathe. But when you get those metal louvers, they're not going to move. They're metal. So all the lint that's coming out of the system is getting stuck behind that louver cover, which is setting yourself up for disaster. You're going to get work orders, and God forbid, worst case scenario, you have.
Yeah, one thing to add to that is, to the covers is you see a lot of like hooded covers, and imagine you're a bird. You look at, these things are all over the building. Your building looks like a gigantic birdhouse. So anything that's single flat, kind of flush, that is where we see the least compounding problems. And they don't cost any more to do them. So
Now, Kenny, what would you recommend with someone that has like a bird magnet to it, besides replacing it? Because I think as an owner, if I'm an owner, the last thing that I wanted to hear is like just do the replacement, the retrofit. What would you recommend? Is there an alternative, a better solution that's not like the radical solution of like just getting rid of them and install the proper ones?
yeah, well, we've done so many a year. We've kind of become bird experts. And what we find is, they have migrants, they have patterns. And once they've established your property that they can get in, they're always coming back. So if you've got a property with bird problems, first you need to get all those, you've got to clean out all these lines all at once. And then you obviously put in, a single flap flush cover that doesn't look like a birdhouse. And they'll move on to an easier property who has, the birdhouse style dryer vent covers. So that's the way you got to solve it. It's kind of a wholesale change. You got to make the commitment. You can't do it a little at a time. You got to make the wholesale commitment because they run off of patterns. So,
Gentlemen, a lot of mic drops here, a lot of knowledge being dropped, right? I want us to kind of start getting to the conversation with a 30,000 foot view, with numbers that are coming from NFPA, USFA, and federal fire data. And I don't want to use this as scare tactics, but they are what property owners are legally held to know and understand. So, Kenny, I'm gonna turn it back to you, and I'm gonna ask you to drop a stat here that's relevant, that's important to you, and it's also important for the audience.
absolutely. Fortunately, we're all CDET certified here, which is the kind of the training body behind, dryer vent cleanings. That's where a lot of the education comes in from the professional side of it. And obviously, we see a lot of data from them, and, the NFPA, tracks about 14,000 dryer vent fires a year, and that resulted in $250,000 in property damage. So, I mean, that's, what, a fire every 35 minutes?
Yeah, that's about right. 35-ish minutes.
Yeah.
How about you, JB?
Yeah.
Your stat drop.
Well, just to piggyback off of what Kenny said, you said 14,600, 500 fires per year, right?
Yep.
Well, out of those 14,000 fires, 2,550 of those, they're happening in multifamily buildings. Shared walls, one ignition point, one fire that can displace an entire building of families. And as sad as that is, it's a reality. We're dealing with a system that gets extremely hot. It can be extremely volatile. And the good news is this scenario, it's preventable. Hence the term preventative maintenance, right? It's a small step that's often overlooked that has tremendous consequences if it's not being taken seriously.
Now let's talk about the root cause. And Kenny, I'm turning it back to you. What's a number that you want to share that keeps the property managers up at night?
Yeah. Well, first off, we got to kind of remember, in regards to multifamily versus, personal at home, right? If you're having dryer vent issues at home, you're going to know because your wife is going to tell you, clothes ain't drying, da 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 da. Here's your weekend project, go take care of it, kind of thing. It doesn't get the attention it probably should in multifamily, across, broadly speaking. But here's a number that keep the managers up at night. 62% of all dryer fires are caused by maintenance failures. 34% of them, one cause alone: failure to clean, failure to maintain. It's not an act of God. These are things that we can prevent, you know?
Staggering numbers, and very, very worrisome. JB, what's a case that sticks to mind that you want to share with the audience, like a real life case that happened?
Yeah, me being from Atlanta here, a proud Atlantean. I remember I saw on the news, I think this was back in 2023, but it was in DeKalb County, and a jury awarded $140 million to a family of a tenant who died in an apartment fire. $140 million. And, at the property, the reason this happened, they lacked basic safety systems. They lacked the preventative maintenance. That's the legal environment we're all operating in here. Real lives are at stake. This is dry vent cleaning, but we are dealing with real lives, which means that this is a real safety item that it needs to be on the community's radar, and it needs to be taken very seriously.
Let's actually do some real math with real numbers. So back to you, Kenny. Let's just make it very real, and let's just say that we have a 200 unit property. If a dryer fire spreads beyond the unit of origin, what does that actually cost them typically?
Well, outside of what JB just kind of highlighted there with legal ramifications, as far as, your sunk cost, with what it cost you because of the event, you're ranging anywhere between $100,000 to $300,000. Resident displacement, months of lost rent. Obviously the legal liabilities that JB highlighted there. Insurance premium increases, reputational damage. Fire. I mean, that's conservatively speaking in a smaller type apartment complex. Now, imagine this happens at some large high rise and it happens on the 30th floor. And now you've got, fire suppression systems going off, and that comes all the way down the building. So these kind of things can get out of hand really, really quick.
And super expensive too, we should say. Probably it's not it's not out of this world to estimate if we're thinking about just garden style, an entire building catching fire. This is at least $500,000 worth of damage.
At least
about, right?
Yeah. Well, and also too,
personal items too.
Yeah, we deal with a lot of older communities that don't have fire suppression. These things go up. It's on the ground before the fire department can get out there. So it can get on you quick.
Yeah, it's easily in the millions, worth of damage from a single dryer fire. That's incredible, right? So now I want to do an exercise of ROI reversal. And JB, let's just say that a proper annual cleaning program for a 200 unit property runs how much? Is it, ballpark?
200 units, I'd say from a CDET certified company, you're looking at $5,000 to $8,000 a year, depending on the setup.
And what would you say a fire cost will cover worth of years of property maintenance to pay for?
Oh man, you're definitely looking at least 10 years of maintenance paid for. I mean, that's probably minimum. I'm lowballing that. Really what you're getting at here is this isn't a call center. What dryer vent cleaning is, it's a risk insurance. And it's actually an insurance that works as well.
Gentlemen, I want to turn like segue into the next segment. And now that we know what the risks look like from the outside, right? Let's talk about what's actually happening inside the walls. It's the stuff that is not so obvious, right? But the stuff that you run into all the time. This is where your field experience really becomes irreplaceable. And Kenny, most people think that the lint trap handles it all, right? They're just thinking it's there, so you must handle it, right? Tell us where the lint trap is actually, what the trap is actually missing.
Yeah, well, that's a good point on the lint trap. People think that's the end all be all. There's a couple things with that. A lot of the times, I mean, a large percentage of every single unit we service, when we pull these lint traps out, they are jam packed with lint. Sometimes we have to completely disassemble the lint housing to get it out, right? And obviously we provide an educational piece to the tenant if they're right there. But another thing, really the main thing a lint trap is supposed to do is catch any loose change, this, that, and the other from coming through the dryer down into the tubes of the dryer and hitting the motor, breaking the motor kind of thing, right? But when it comes to the system itself, from the dryer where your clothes are through the lint trap all the way to the exterior, it is an incredibly sensitive system, right? And so you got to make sure that you cover your basics for it to even work properly. And it's, you've got a lot of people don't know that you can't join this pipe together with screws. So it has to be taped together. So it goes back to, they're very sensitive. And this is why they require a lot of maintenance. This is why they recommend an annual type of service. So these aren't like an out of sight, out of mind type system.
So if you've been in property management long enough as a property manager, you probably see, guys up there on the ladders from outside, like, sticking something inside the vent and cleaning it, right? So I always wonder, this is the right thing, this is how it should be done. So JB, now we're seeing a lot of that, right? Exterior only, exclusively, like people don't pull keys, they don't attempt to enter inside apartments, like they're just cleaning from outside looking in. What are these companies actually missing when they're doing exterior only cleaning?
Man, okay. How much time you got, Adrian?
Take all the time that you need, brother. That's what we're here for, and we want to drop as much value to the audience as possible. I think the more detail, the better understanding for them it is. It's incredibly important that we double down on this so that everybody understands, right? Because again, I'm not an expert. I spent 20 plus years in property management, but I'm by no means an expert. And that's the reason why, why you guys own the show and we're doing this webinar together, to actually share the knowledge with people just like me that operated sometimes for many decades, but they still don't know driver and cleaning. They don't even know what to look for. And that's the whole thing here. So,
well, exterior cleanings, you're going to miss a lot of hazards, full stop. For instance, you're not going to be able to detect a disconnected hose. You're not going to be able to see a crushed duct, plastic piping that violates the fire code, or even no piping whatsoever that's coming out into the interior of the unit. We've seen that more than we'd like to admit. Not to mention a lint trap, like Kenny mentioned, that hasn't been cleaned since the Braves won a World Series. Exterior only services, also, what they tend to do is it will push the debris inwards towards the dryer, compacting the lint, and you're getting that closer to the heating element. Listen, I get it. Okay. I know going inside the unit's a sensitive subject. Property managers, ownership groups, they want to avoid it like the plague. And I understand why. But when you're dealing with a component of your property that can cause a fire, it's worth dealing with some pushback from a resident just to ensure that your property and more importantly, your residents, that everything is as safe as possible.
Yeah, well, a lot of folks think that we could settle, we should settle for convenience, don't inconvenience the residents, not thinking about the consequences. Um, Back to you, Kenny, right now. Let's walk through what these interior inspections are constantly finding on a daily basis. Walk us through like the main findings, the main concerns.
Yeah, absolutely. The first point I'd like to start with is the fire source is the dryer. That is the ignition point. And so when you provide an exterior only cleaning, you're missing a lot on the inside. You need to be you need to be putting eyeballs at the fire source. We've seen all kinds of things. We've seen, whether the resident has altered something in the unit, whether it be the electrical plug, no electrical plug cover. We see spilled detergent all over the backside of the dryer. People don't think that's flammable. It's very flammable. We see these closets just slam full of everything that the tenant owns. Now you've got fresh air problems. You've got things that could fall down behind the dryer, cause ignition. It's obviously you see the lint traps. We talked about that. Those get jammed up. And I'd like to mention on that, nowadays with a lot of work from home, well, it really allows us an educational piece. You would just be blown away at how many people have no clue that they're supposed to, that the clean out is even there to be serviced. Like they have no clue. They're like, whoa, what is that? So we really provide a lot of education when we're able to go from inside. We're able to check for all the code compliance items in which, NFPA, mechanical code, all these things recommend. And when we don't see it, we're able to, make notes and provide this information to the property when we're finished, unit by unit, if there's a deficiency. So it really helps get a pulse, understanding, and feel for where this property is and if it needs anything. A scope of work's already been generated, for things outside of the actual cleanings.
Yeah, Kenny, I'm staying with you here, and I want to talk a little bit about the key access inside, because it's very common being on operator side to be or oversee properties that are hundreds of units, and there are actually dozens, if not hundreds, of keys they're missing. Right, no matter what key system they use, whether it's key track, handy trap type, or like the good old box. They has some tags in it, with numbers on them that everybody could like open and just grab a bunch of keys and leave.
We advise against that, Adrian.
Yeah. So yeah, let's talk about this insight on a key access, because I think this is a very important point that you could be making here for the audience, for property managers watching.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you know a lot about the key access stuff, Adrian. You used to be on site, but keys are important, very important. Obviously, everybody knows that, but JB could tell you there is a very high percentage of properties we go to on a daily basis that have key issues. They've lost keys. They've got keys mislabeled, this, that, or other, which blocks us from being able to access that unit, which we have to come back and do it later when we gain access. But it really provides an opportunity for the manager and the team on site a full, complete audit of their key system. Say, okay, we got this driver and stuff done. We got these 11 keys that we need to get figured out. This is good. Let's go ahead and handle this. And we've seen some pretty extreme we've seen some extreme key situations too, where 30-40% of the property is just they had a transition, and it is absolute, key nightmare. Nonetheless, I think there's a lot of importance on it. I don't know, what the exact kind of regulations are from the fire jurisdiction, but I'm pretty sure it was like it used to. They're pretty tight on that stuff.
Well, I'm just gonna say this: like, if you end up in a situation where a fire happens or something happens because of a deficiency that was overlooked, was improperly handled, don't be surprised if the fire marshal, along with your inspection report, asks for a key out report. And then if you don't have a key out report, or if you pull the report and it shows for the period of time that the inspection took place, there weren't keys pulled, or keys were not pulled for that particular apartment, this might be like a huge liability for you as a property owner and manager. What I suggest is that create a code that you use when you pull keys out. If you have like the key track, handy track, they typically go by operation, right? Work orders has a code assigned to it. Inspections. Build a code into your key system that actually shows dryer inspection. So when the fire marshal might come and ask you for proof that the keys were actually pulled, you could pull like a clean report that shows that all the keys for all apartments were pulled during the period of time that the inspection took place. And it shows like a very clean code that says dryer and cleaning. So there's no debate out there. Everything is clear as daylight.
Absolutely. I got one thing to add too, in regards to really pushing to do this stuff from the inside. Is one pushback we get a lot is properties are behind on work orders, and they give us pushback because they don't want to send a on-site tech with us. My pushback on that is it's a great opportunity for your on-site technician to come along with us. They handle the keys, so that's a huge thing. But they're downloading a pulse on the property from the dryer vent side of things with us. The technician on our side, the technician on their side, they're communicating all day. They're side by side. So, these on-site teams it's an opportunity for the on-site team to really know and understand everything going on in regards to dryer vents on their site.
Now, knowing what's behind the dryer is just step one. I like to start talking about how these fires actually ignite, because the mechanical sequence is both simple and terrifying. And Kenny, I want for you to break it down exactly how a fire dryer starts. Walk us through in layman language, in plain language.
Absolutely. Well, there's a couple ways. The most common way is, obviously, everybody knows dryer lint is extremely flammable. It goes up so quick. So these dryers use heating elements. This, dryer vent dust or dryer vent lint build up. It doesn't take much to ignite it. So if it comes into contact with that heating element, the right environments are there, boom, here you go. Now here's another one. You have safety switches in these dryer vents. Say, for instance, you got a clogged line or a significantly restricted line. That dryer is going to hit a safety switch. Boom, 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 boom. Keep cutting off, keep cutting off. And that's when you hear residents complain, hey, it takes me this many times to do my laundry, kind of thing. That is a super red flag, because that safety switch is a mechanical switch, which means it's only going to work so many times. Once that mechanical switch has expired its contact limits, now you got a ticking time bomb. So the next time, once that safety switch goes out, it's going to overheat and completely melt down. Boom, fire ignition. Here we go. So those are Those are the situations that are really going to, those are the main ones. You've got electrical issues, overheating the plug, types of things. And the one that you can't prevent is just mechanical failure, right? Those happen. That have nothing to do with anything outside of maintenance, but those things happen from time to time, but it's very, very rare.
So, what would you say are the four main buckets that we're looking at, the risk buckets, if you were to categorize them for like in four distinct buckets?
Yeah, well, first one would be extreme, excessive in-closet lint buildup that enables the ignition point from the heating elements, and that usually comes from a disconnected dryer hose, right? Because your dryer vent's just drying, kicking lint out, recycling it in the closet, and so now you're with that hose disconnected, you're recycling, lint in the air that comes right back through the heating elements. That's the worst case scenario. So that's why it's important to really make sure your hoses are connected. Number two is cleaning your dryer vents, making sure there's no restrictions that's causing buildup, that's causing overwhelming stress on your dryer, to hit your safety switches and all those things. And then your fourth one would be, mechanical failure. So that second and third one I kind of put together, but if you break those out in 2 and 3, your fourth would be things outside of everybody's control, manufacturer issue type thing.
A few stats about fires here, because I guess we're just looking at saying spreading like fire, but we don't know necessarily like the physics of fire spreads. Once a fire is ignited, it can double in size every 30 seconds. In multifamily construction, time to flashover can be as short as 90 seconds. Modern fires burn 8 times faster than 50 years ago because of the synthetic materials that are used in construction. In a shear wall building with a one ignition point, a single dryer fire that spreads becomes a building emergency in a matter of minutes. Now, for everyone, that you understand how this fire start, I want to talk about what you can actually be monitoring right now, today, at your properties to prevent. And I'm gonna have this question for you, JB. You've been inside thousands of units. What are the warning signs operators are walking past every day without recognizing them?
Wow. I would say warning sign number one is lint visible at the exterior vent cover. Walk your property, get out there, get a little exercise, look at the exhaust vent covers. Check those out on all the buildings that you have. If you see lint building up on those covers, those systems are backing up. Lint's not exhausting properly. That's your early warning sign that's telling you that it's definitely time for an inspection. I'd say warning sign number two would be a spike in dryers not working work orders. Listen to your property. It's going to talk to you. The maintenance work order system, it's basically a dryer vent health monitoring system. And most operators, they don't use it in that way. They get a work order. They're like, oh, another work order. Let me knock it out. Okay. Actually, the USFA, it identifies a spike in dryers not drying or dryers taking too long. Those complaints, it's a primary operational indicator of a clogged dryer vent. Dryers, they are tough machines, but if they're breaking down, they're underperforming, something is creating resistance that they shouldn't be fighting, you're going to start seeing that roll through into your work order system. Number three, I would probably go with excessive heat in laundry rooms. If maintenance techs are going in and they're noting that the laundry rooms are really hot, that heat has nowhere to go, restricted airflow, it's going to cause heat to build in that space rather than venting outside. So that's a red flag. Number four, dryer shutting off mid-cycle. So that's the high limit thermostat that Kenny was talking about, that internal function that'll let you know. The thermal fuse is actually getting tripped. So these are safety mechanisms, and they do have a finite life cycle, like Kenny mentioned. But every time they trip, they're degrading. So these things fail permanently. There's nothing left between the heat element and a lint fire. Um, Number 5, I would say, is probably going to be burning smells from the dryer, a pretty obvious one there. Um, it's not going to probably be fine if you smell a burning smell coming from the dryer. That burning smell, it means that lint may already be catching on fire and smoldering, and it's going to require immediate attention, same day. Do not push this to that's a tomorrow problem. That's a right now, this minute, this hour problem. So get on top of it. But Adrian, I would say those would definitely be my top warning signs for everyone to look out for.
I got a bonus one.
Here we go.
This is a bonus warning sign.
Go for it.
For the communities that have tenant supplied washer dryers, please offer to go hook that stuff up for them. We see everything that you can imagine when when a tenant installs their own washer and dryer. And there's a lot of communities out there like that. You're now operating on a hope and a prayer that they hooked it up right. Send a tech by there, make sure everything's right. That's what I got on that.
Kenny, I'll actually, on top of that, I walked into a unit and I have seen someone roll up a newspaper from the dryer into the venting system into the wall. It was a rolled up newspaper is what they were using as a transition hose. So Kenny's right.
So there was a time in my experience as I was working at the site where I said residents got to hook up their own washers and dryers. We were very busy, but that only worked out until someone flooded an apartment trying to hook it up. And then I realized, luckily it wasn't a fire because that would have been like a lot more devastating. But then that I just realized this is not just something that you want to rely on your residents for, because some people are great, with just doing little things, little handiwork, and some aren't, and they don't understand pipes behind the wall. Like if it's CPVC, that's very brittle, especially on a 40-year-old building. And the stuff that holds the pipes behind the wall, like those brackets, they become loose or they never been installed. And when you try to hook something up, this creates immediately like a situation out there that you're gonna feel sorry for immediately. Another one with the dryer was, I remember having a call. A resident just moved in, and they called the office being like, how would I say? They were incredibly upset, saying that our property is like trying to kill them, trying to electrocute them. So I'm going to the apartment to assess the situation as a service manager. My manager told me, she said, this is serious, you gotta go. So when I'm walking into the laundry room, I'm looking at them literally having a dryer cord on one end being plugged in, and on the other end, the wires, the connectors that connect to the dryer, they were sitting on top of the dryer. They tried to test the plug to make sure that it was like the proper prong type, and they left the wires exposed on the other end on top of the dryer. And of course you're gonna have an incredible short. And I could tell that black spot where the short happened because he scared the heck out of them. And that's exactly what happened. So we're not even talking about here some knowledge, but it's really the lack of common sense that you're dealing with, and that's an incredibly dangerous situation. They could have been killed. They could have died from that. And obviously they were upset with us, with the property, saying that we're trying to kill them.
Yeah.
So those are my war stories there.
Yeah. Now, what we've seen out there by doing so many a year, if I was an owner of a property or whatever the case may be, there is no way I would allow tenants to hook their own stuff up. There's no way. Absolutely no way.
Kenny, you mentioned education for residents. I want to get very practical here and ask you, what can management do proactively to prevent these findings between the annual inspections?
Yeah, this is my favorite. This is my favorite stuff to talk about. Uh, there is so much free stuff you can do that takes, I mean, less than a minute, to be honest with you. We know on site that there's, technicians have to come in, replace HVAC filters maybe once, twice a year or more. Spend 15 seconds opening that dryer closet and cleaning the lint trap for the tenant. Just assume that they don't know about it. Operate that they under the assumption that they don't know about it. Clean that, take a peek, make sure everything's good, hose is connected, make sure there's no flammables and spray paint laying back there. Give it a once over, everything's good, keep it rolling. If you notice something, write it down and advise a resident that you got to come back. Or simply just say, hey, resident, you got to get all this stuff out of here. You got flammables in an ignition point. So that's free. And you're getting eyeballs on it once or twice a year. And many times that makes all the difference in the world. Seriously.
So for those of you in an audience, this is your action item for the day right here. Add a lint trap check to every unit turn and every filter change. It costs you zero money, just a little bit of time, sometimes seconds, but it's a real risk reduction. Now, I want to get into the code and the legal side of things, because this is where operators are most exposed. And this is a question for you, Kenny. When someone says a vendor clean dryers vents to NFPA 211 standards, what does that actually mean? What did the standard require to happen?
Yeah, so when it comes to NFPA 211, essentially everything you need to know and adhere to when it comes to dryer systems is on one page. It's front side and the back side. Everything lives right there. And these are the guidelines in which you need to operate this system within to prevent, problems. They've paired it up with manufacturer recommendations. It's going to give you footage totals. It's going to give you, what to look for on, what you need for electrical, what, your requirements for your hose, not to be using PVC style hose. Make sure you're using semi-metallic. Make sure you got proper banding there, not, not taped on or a zip tie. Make sure you have a band in there somehow or another that puts tension on it. Making sure you're not screening the vents or screening the system anywhere in between. That way, if lint is coming down the pipe, it don't get caught up and hung up. The system can breathe and sometimes self-medicate itself. When you got it screened, it's a ticking time bomb because it can't go anywhere. Everything slipping by the lint trap is just compounding and building. But the NFPA is, it's kind of married to, mechanical code. That is kind of your mechanical code on how your property needs to run. And you can really measure it up against what you have and see if you're within code or not. I will tell you this. Most properties we run into, I've noticed the year around 1998, 1999, and after, there's a lot more consistency in adhering to these guidelines, from when they built the property. Anything before that, it could go any way imaginable. So if you have a property that's built after that date, you got a lot more leeway than somebody prior That's the wild, wild west of a dryer vent property. Hopefully it was done right, but this is where, those style properties is where you really need to lean in on not just the dryer vent cleaning. Make sure your stuff is up to what this is. And if it isn't, obviously take necessary measures to make sure it is.
Next, Kenny, the CDT certification. Why does it matter when me as a property manager operator, I'm choosing a vendor, a dry cleaning vendor?
Yeah, well, CDET certification, it's kind of an odd thing to, reach out for knowledge in regards to this. Most people think that, it's a dryer vent. Oh, what could it be? Right. This is a certified body that has consolidated all the information you need, like we've talked about here, but puts it in a form in which you can learn from, your technicians can learn from, we can learn from. It's a training module with all the knowledge to get it into, to get it into the technicians for their experience, that it's providing great information and ability for them to train on it and have to pass the test. They have to pass the test. It's 80% now. It's not 70, 71. You got to pass this thing with 80%. So it's a great body. I really do enjoy it and appreciate what they do. And to be honest with you, I think they're the only one. Last I checked, we've been with them for quite some time.
Now,
just to add to that, I'm sorry, CDET, for those that don't know, it's Certified Dryer Exhaust Technicians. That's what it stands for.
Thank you for the note, JB. Kenny, back to you. How do I know if I'm an operator if dryer vent cleaning is legally required in my area?
Well, if it is, you'll have a lot of pressure down your neck from the local fire jurisdiction whenever they do your annual inspection reports and whatnot. That's where you're gonna feel the pressure. That doesn't mean that you shouldn't be taking care of things regardless, because when it comes back to the liability portion, if something was to happen, insurance is going to come and say, all right, well, show me this, show me that. You haven't had your dryer vents cleaned in 2 years. NFPA, which is the governing body of all fire life safety, says you should recommend, they recommend doing this once a year, right? So fire jurisdiction or not, the message is coming clear from the very, very top that you need to be taking care of everything once a year. So, but we're starting to see a lot more jurisdictions hold people accountable, and in these fire jurisdictions are putting it on their checklist of when they show up, they've got this, and okay, show me your dryer vent service log, from your cleaning this year. So it's starting to land on the ledger a lot. We're seeing it spread quite a bit.
Kenny, if there's a fire starting tomorrow, what type of documentation protects ownership?
Yeah, that's a great question. And this is why it's important to lean on a CDET CDET qualified vendor. There's strict language requirements when you do a service like this that goes through everything, checklist, summary, blah, 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 blah. When that service is done and it's handed over to the manager, that's your golden ticket for liability. If anything happens, you've got this that they're going to be requesting, showing that you performed what was required and what was recommended, and here's the service log to prove it. And that's been done by a CDET certified company, which provides a direct line of unification of doing what you were supposed to from the very top all the way to the bottom. So your CDET certified vendors are going to be providing the information that's going to protect you in the event something happens.
This documentation framework is the difference between an insurance claim being paid and an ownership group eating the full loss themselves. I want to mention a couple of legal cases for reference. Venetian Hills Apartments in Atlanta, 2023, $140 million verdict. Family of the resident killed in an apartment fire. Haiti Manor Apartments in Portland, Oregon, 2023, $6.4 million settlement. 3 residents died. Property had 10 plus years of prior fire code violations. The Electrolux Frigidaire class action, $8 million settlement. Dryers caught fire from lint buildup. 13,600 units were recalled after 23 fires were experienced. The lack of maintenance documentation is the evidence that drives massive verdicts. Juries will view absent records as evidence of systemic neglect. As a key insurance principle, carriers investigate for long-term lint buildup. Classification as homeowner neglect can result in full claim denial and no recovery. Gentlemen, next segment, before we wrap up, I want to go very practical and go over how do we read a vendor proposal. Again, I'm a property manager. I'm not an expert in drywall cleaning, and I'm looking at 2 proposals side by side. JB, do you want to take this one to talk about the red flags? Let's just say the scenario is right. There's $200 to $500 difference between the two vendors, right? That presented the proposals. My tendency will be to say, well, I'm just gonna go with the cheaper one, but is that actually what I should be doing? Let's talk about the red flags that disqualify a proposal and why they matter.
Yeah, the first one I would say, Adrian, and this is an easy one. If you're receiving proposals, unless you have a national portfolio deal with the vendor, if you're receiving proposals that are less than around, I'd say $16, $15, that's a red flag. That's generally going to be an exterior only service, no unit entry, probably no documentation, and no compliance value. Legitimate full service, I would say, depending on what area of the country you're in, runs from anywhere from $8 all the way up to $70 per unit. And that really just depends on the volume, number of units, what's your setup. This is also where the bait and switch scheme really likes to operate here. Number 2 red flag, I would say no mention of interior unit access. The vendor's planning exterior only cleanings, disconnected hoses, the plastic ductwork we talked about, the electrical hazard, CDET certification, as you guys were just harping on. If a company can't show you their CDET certification, more than likely that means they don't have one. Anyone can call themselves a dryer vent technician. You can go on Amazon right now. You can buy the $20 sticks and a drill, and you're ready to go clean a dryer vent. But the CDET, that's the only nationally recognized credential. If that's not on the proposal, if it doesn't exist, make sure you're just asking for that certificate number. And you can also verify these vendors at csia.org. The next one I would say would be no documentation and no deliverables listed. So they don't give you a service log after the service is completed. No service log equals no legal protection, which means no insurance protection. So if the proposal is not listing and documenting what you're going to receive, more than likely you're going to receive nothing that you can use that's going to really protect you from that liability. Um, I would also say no insurance documentation. So general liability, workers' comp, property damage, no certificate of insurance naming your property as an additional insured. That means you're going to absorb that liability. So always make sure when you're dealing with a CDET certified vendor that you are making sure that you guys get added on as an additional insured on that COI. Those would be mine, Adrian.
Yep.
Now, not every vent cleaning is created equal, like we were talking about throughout the entire hour. So, Kenny, I'm turning to you right now, and I want you to walk us through methods of cleaning and when each one of them is appropriate.
Absolutely. You've got a couple different methods. There's the air compressor method. You've got the brushing method. You've got blowing methods. You've got vacuum brushing methods. You've got quite a few. What you have to really remember here is it's a case-by-case basis to some degree in scenarios in which what is going to work best for your property, right? Anytime you run across a property, we'll just go to the worst case scenario here first, right? Worst case scenario is going to be a property that hasn't been done in who knows how long, right? And the runs are so long, and they haven't been done in so long, you've got significant buildup. Significant. The only way that you can do that is through, a brushing vacuum method. That's going to be your best way of doing it. Those are the most extreme cases. Now, it's important to remember here when it comes to brushing. Remember, I told you guys earlier that this dryer vent piping, it cannot be screwed together. It has to be taped together, right? And obviously, it's seamed together and all these things and what have you. But there's only so many times you're going to get away with using such an abrasive style of cleaning, right? And so what you don't want to do is get into a routine of doing your maintenance with an overly aggressive type of cleaning, in which is breaking down your pipe. Now you're cleaning your dryer vents and separating pipe or breaking tape, breaking joints. So you're trying to achieve something good here, and a byproduct of going too aggressive is causing you a lot of issues, right, for the vendor, but also on site. Your reverse air compressor method, they work in the preventative roll maintenance. You've got an established type of property who's doing this on a routine. The only thing that only kind of catch back with that is they have a lot of issues getting past multiple bins, this, that, and the other. And I think what we're getting at here is in order to properly maintain your property, you need to be doing this as a preventative maintenance type of program. Because if you're not, you're having to introduce very aggressive cleaning methods, which is going to guarantee you're going to be breaking pipe. Now, you're defeating the whole purpose of this. When you're providing annual maintenance on this stuff, a lot of different methods will work plenty fine, right? So you got to really lean on taking care of what you got. You can't let your systems fall into a dilapidated style state, because then you're not going to have a system altogether. So, each property is different. You got some that go to the roof. You've got some that, are short. You've got some that are extremely long. You've got booster fans. You've got a whole lot of different things, in which sometimes requires a combination of all. So it's important that your vendor isn't married to one style cleaning only. They can't be a one trick pony. Your vendor needs to be able to do any and all of these. You know, I guess that's the best way of putting it. Make sure you're getting a vendor who can do them all if they have to.
German, thank you for a very educational, information packed hour. As we wrap up the conversation today, JB, any final thoughts?
Yeah, I would just say make sure you're on top of your dry vent cleaning. I know, I talked to a lot of other vendors. There's a lot of bright and shiny things out there that apartments want to, put on their budgets. You want the dog park, you want the pet washing station, the pickleball court. I totally get that, right? But at the end of the day, just because you can't see dryer events does not mean that that is not something you need to definitely put in your budget. You need to make sure you're taking care of it annually because, that pickleball court and that dog wash station is nice, but it's not going to catch your property on fire. And, we're dealing with personal property. We're dealing with lives.
Lives.
So make sure that, you guys are doing your part to make sure that you're not only protecting your property, but more importantly, protecting those residents.
Yeah.
Great message. You, Kenny, final words?
Yeah. One thing to mention here is, this is a fire life safety issue. And when things go wrong, it's not good. And what I mean by that is this is why your documentation and paperwork is everything, because the person you hired to do this could do the best job of all time on site. And Tweety Bird flies in 2 months later and builds a nest in unit 1410, and it causes a fire. You don't have your documentation, regardless of the incredible work that person did. It's null and void. So, you got to make sure that you don't miss any step along the way.
Kenny, would you like to share like the 2 free resources? Well, it's 1 free resource and a discount code that we have for the audience for those that join us today.
Absolutely. Yeah, we'll drop it in the chat here in a few minutes. And yeah, I mean, I'm sure people got some questions. I hope they got some questions. Maybe I got some answers.
You got it. Everyone, thank you for being with us today. We're going to drop the free resource. Is it tell us how you name it, because this is like a proprietary name.
Yeah, well, it's we called it the 10 Commandments of Dry Vents.
So you're going to get for free the 10 Commandments of the dry vents. And also we're going to drop a link with a discount for you if you want to contact Kenny's company, have them do a quote for you. That's using that particular link is going to give you is there a 15%, right? A 15% discount.
Yes. What do we got? 15? Yep, 15.
Okay. 15. Gentlemen, once again, great having you today. Thank you for all the knowledge that you dropped today, and hopefully we'll get you back here soon.
Absolutely. Yeah. Who's got questions? And thanks for having us. This was fun. Yeah. It's important to get a lot of this basic stuff across the table. It costs no money. I mean, it's just, and you can't blame nobody. It's out of sight, out of mind, but we've got to shed some light on it.
That's the point, just putting the education out there and, let everybody get in contact with that, get exposed to it. And, hopefully we get as a consequence, less accidents, less fires. Once again, gentlemen, thank you for joining today. And thank you to all of you that made time out of your busy day to join us live. Obviously, we're going to have the recording here on LinkedIn, and in a couple of days, it's going to be available also on YouTube. We're going to go through a post-production. We're going to do the webinar highlights. So there's more to come, and we will drop the free resource and the discount codes in the comments right there. Take care, y'all. Have a great afternoon.
Thank you, Adrian. We appreciate you.
Thank you, Adrian.